Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this second webinar in a series we try to bring to all of you considering and related to the current, let's say, unusual situation all around the world. Who would have thought that we would be working like this in such a situation as we all do? Probably most of you doing at the moment, or most of us working from home, seeing our colleagues less and less, which can be a benefit in some cases, but you might get a bit lonely as well, and everyone sees their friends probably less, and maybe their family a bit more. I guess we all have, in a way, our challenges regarding maybe the sharing of laptops at home, trying to do both the schoolwork of your kids and your work for yourself at home. So really unusual times and really trying to combine all stuff. So again, and welcome in this seminar where we try to sort of enlighten you a bit and give you some materials and ideas of things happening all over the world. So obviously this is not only a Dutch problem, it's happening all over the world, and it has so much impact, and mostly in a negative way, of course. But maybe in a way also some positive developments as well, getting maybe a bit more time every now and then, a bit more family time and so on, a sort of different pace of life. So all together also, I think, interesting and maybe looking forward to changes in the future. A part of the presentation of today, also some positive sides. Let's hope so. My name is Eric. I will do this presentation together with Maaike today. I think it's scheduled for like 1 hour, but knowing the attention span of most people in online ways, we will try to keep that to 45 minutes max. And as you can hear, it's in English because a lot of people attending are non-Dutch speaking. So we try our best to do this in English for you. Maybe a few things around the organization. So if you have got any questions, just type them in the box meant for that. We will pick them up probably at the end of the presentation, and we try to help you there, answer your questions as best as we can. We might not be able to answer all your questions, given the scope of time. And the goal to keep it until 45 minutes. But we can always send you information afterwards or try to answer your questions by email later. And the same goes, by the way, for all materials. Everything shown here today will be shared next week, including some other materials you can use for, let's say, giving some guidance for your organization in the current time. So much for introduction. What we want to share today is based on let's say, diversity, a bigger range of studies we're doing. As all research agency, we as well at Ipsos are doing a lot of studies at the moment related to Corona, obviously, because it's the team most front in mind of all people, also researchers, also organizations. So we try to sort of combine different sources we have and give you an overview of where we stand today. Again, this is the second one in a series of presentations, and the next one will be next week. It's more about trends. I will tell a bit about that later on. So we try to keep you informed on a week-to-week basis. As for today, three sort of main topics. We start with, let's say, what's happening around coronavirus in a more, let's say, generic way. It's becoming real for a lot of people. It's really influencing their day-to-day situation in the way they live in. The second part is about how is it changing the world, but also the opinion of people. And the third one is a quick outlook, as far as we can already, on how this might influence the future. So 3 topics for today. Start with the first one. So what's happening? For this part, we mostly use a big global tracker we have been building over the last few weeks or months even, where we in over 20 countries measure what is happening regarding opinions related to corona. Again, giving the 45 minutes scope, I will not go into detail on every slide. But some I might walk through a bit quickly, but it will be sent to you next week, so you can deep dive into it. But given a few pictures on what's happening on a global scale. Starting with how people feel threatened by the virus in a more generic way. And because we have been measuring this for a longer period already, you can also see the changes, and it's quite interesting, where you see especially Italy mentioned here, sort of in the center, where people feel threatened a bit, and it threatens their country a bit, but when it starts to become real and they really see what the impact is, this really jumps up. So a lot of countries really have the feeling they are and their country is impacted by the coronavirus. Obviously, but you also see again these developments like Italy going really up when it gets real in a way. And we also asked this for the Dutch audience. It's on the right side, so there also 74% really feel that it's impacting or threatening the, let's say, the security of their country. So that's a generic global feeling of showing the impact of what is happening. Again, also mentioning health, connected to health. How does it influence your health? Really severely, specifically in the Asian countries, there they feel more threatened related to health. Interestingly enough, you see Italy, it's going down a bit in the last wave, where there might have been a sort of a reaction of sort of panic in the first step, and now it's getting a bit more normalized and maybe a bit more relaxed there. So you see changes per country as well. In the Netherlands, it's sort of in the lower range. So I think Dutch audience tend to be a bit relaxed in perspective on these things, and quite a good trust in healthcare system and so on. So people are worried about their health, of course, but it's a bit lower compared to some other countries. There's also the economic perspective. So how does it, and it obviously is because we're all working from home, right? It influences business, job security, and so on, also for the near future. So this is also some topic we have been asking questions around for a longer period of time. And you see this rising in all countries quite severely, especially again, Italy, where you see a big jump in the way people feel threatened in their, let's say, job or business security. So people are really worried how this will impact their job and their economic future. And in the Dutch audience, the orange one on the right, it's a bit less there. So people are a bit worried. Of course, we have quite a good social system here in the Netherlands, so people feel a bit secure. It is, by the way, not so easy in a study like this to compare all the results between countries, because we do a measurement at the same time in all countries, but every country is going through their different phasing, so to say, if you relate it to Corona. Some countries are quite further up ahead of in the curve, like China, and then Italy, Spain after that, and we are a bit in let's say the lower, slower regions. So it's not only timing when you ask this question, but also how far are you up the curve. And obviously what has been happening all around the world also influences how people think and what they know about these topics. But big changes in on a global scale in the way people feel about not only health but also the economic security. So that's a bit on where we stand now. So what's the current situation? It really, that's the second thing, it really impacts the way we think about a lot of things. Again, using a bit of the same study, but also some other materials here. This is a picture, for example, from the Mexican-US border, one of the, or actually the busiest border around the globe. I think like 700,000 people or so crossing this border every day normally, and now it's almost empty. So there's a really unprecedented situation, at least in modern times, of not traveling to other countries. So every country is a bit on its own, so you could say. That's one of the questions we have been asking here as well, and this is really if you really think about this really strange way of looking upon the world and the really strange figures, it's like on a general level, 80% or so of world population thinks country borders should be closed until COVID-19 is sort of ended or contained. And no one knows how long that will take. So it can be many more months. So there's, if you look at especially at modern European history, where we have open borders, we have EXAGGERATIng and so on. And this is how we look at the current situation. It's such a mind shift. It's really impressive, but more probably in a negative way. The thing about the Netherlands is I think in the list we are lowest in this regard. So we tend to have, because trading country, open borders and so on. So we have this sentiment is less shared compared to other countries, at least, that this should be done. But therefore we are a bit different compared to some other countries, compared to the global scale. One other really interesting topic, if you think about changing the way we see things and we think about stuff, is how we look upon the media. So one of the questions in the survey is, do you think the media is exaggerating the whole COVID-19 development? And there you see some interesting facts. For example, looking at Italy again, one of the most severely struck countries. Until a few weeks ago, a lot of people said, well, now the media is really exaggerating this. But now they really face what is happening, and this has really dropped significantly. So people tend to get more trust in a way in the media landscape. And this is also an interesting topic on how will this permanently influence the way people look upon media for the future. For example, India is later on the curve, and there are a lot of things happening. You probably read it in the news, like 100 million people traveling all around the country to get back to some situation where they can get some income, because they lost all their day jobs all of a sudden. But there's no public transportation anymore, so the country is really in stress. And there they are still in the feeling that it's not really necessary, that the media is exaggerating this. But we probably see in the next wave, or maybe the wave after that, that will start changing as well. But we don't know for sure, of course. In the Netherlands, where we tend to have quite a big trust in media compared to other countries, this is much lower. So we don't think, even in this point of time, that media is really exaggerating this topic. Another way of looking at this topic is social media, of course. A lot being said probably, and you can read it, about what's happening regarding social media, fake news. It's been a popular topic for quite some time already, but now especially Corona related. A lot of things are being said on the internet which cannot be true, and this is an example actually. Two news a few minutes between each other regarding Bolsonaro. One message said he was infected by COVID-19, and another Twitter message said he was not. Both become trending topics, so people start talking about different things in a major way. A lot of posts and reposts and tweets, and they cannot be true both. So this is you have 1,000 examples of these things. If you bring this back to the Netherlands, it's quite interesting. Also, one of the things we ask is, so what's the best source of information for you regarding Corona? There you see a big trust still in, let's say, traditional media, TV, television, governmental websites. We have Google sort of in betweenish, like 20% say this is a good source. And the more direct social media, from WhatsApp to Twitter, much less a good source of information. On the other hand, we know a lot of people really use this as their sometimes main or only source of information. So while people might not all trust this, it's still being used in such a way. So this influences public opinion as well in a severe way. So this is the situation we are in now. So how long will this take? So we're all a bit worried about this. It has in a way all been, yeah, it has been going quite well. I think we all know, at least I still know it. It wasn't that long ago that we thought, oh, this is sort of a Chinese problem. It might come here, but no one was really worried about. And now we're all in a situation, as I mentioned earlier, working from home. So this transformation has been going really fast. And people are also worried, how long will this take? Again, being with your family for a bigger amount of time is quite nice, but probably for more of you, same for me, running, in my case, 3 kids through the school work and doing my normal job at the same time. It's all quite challenging, interesting in a way, but definitely challenging. So I guess a lot of you can recognize this, and you can read a lot about that as well. So, but when will it get back to normal, or what's supposed to be normal? We will talk about that later on. So one of the questions we asked is, do you think by roughly June will things return to normal? And depends a bit per country and how far up the curve they are in a way. But a lot of people say, well, I think by June things will be back to normal. But if you look on the right side, probably quite small, but if you see how the disease develops when it starts to happen in a country, it's not likely that it will be ended by June. So people will probably get disappointed by this as well, and because things continue, and even if the biggest measures are being taken down, it's not like all of a sudden everyone can go full-time to work. Probably, no one knows for sure, of course. So this might take quite a longer time than expected, and then there will be reactions from the audience as well, disappointment and not knowing how to move on further and so on. So we can expect quite a lot of things happening here in the upcoming period, I think. The Netherlands is a bit more neutral or relaxed, or maybe realistic, where people say this to a lesser extent. So a lot of people already have in their mind that this might happening. Over 50% of the people think this will continue also after June. So also good to bear in mind. The second thing about this is, so what is up, or at least until that time, so what is the normal, the sort of the new normal in a way? Some really interesting figures, I think. So, for example, 30% already of the people is in some way of quarantine, so working from home in the situation I described earlier. But also really interesting for a Dutch audience, I thought, was that 69% agrees that people not maintaining distance and not following the rules, the corona-related rules, should be fined heavily. And we all know a Dutch audience, they can be a bit, I don't know, like bending the rules in a way. We might be a bit different compared to Germans in a generic way. So many people saying that these people should be fined heavily is saying something about the emotion this brings and the seriousness we are taking here. Also related to the economy, 46% is saying, okay, I'm delaying major purchases. So that's really not good for economy if a lot of people are saying this. And if this situation continues, which again is not unlikely, what will that mean for the economy? And also there's also opportunities for some companies, but also our media consumption and so on. So the 45% on Netflix mentioned here, and I will get back to that later, also Chinese situation. This really impacts how we live in a way. Connected to this, and we will send this to you later, but because we sense that a lot of organizations have all their employees working from home, and we were quite interested in what does this mean for people? Can they still do their work in a normal way? Are they happy, or they're really depressed, or what does it mean with their, let's say, efficiency of working and so on? So we developed sort of a scan, a home working scan, to check on how employees feel, or how your employees in your organization feel, and compare that to a benchmark, because we think that's quite a relevant topic for Dutch economy, but also for individuals, companies at the moment. So then back to some examples of what's happening in other countries. We have a lot of information, but we took some examples just to show you what's happening in this case in 4 other countries. Really quickly. So we start with France. Full lockdown, more strict ruling compared to the Netherlands. And one of the things we saw, we did quite a big social media monitoring in how they use social media and also what are they talking about. And really, in short, it's sort of 1 or 2 days after the lockdown started, social media in a way exploded, not only for finding information on Corona, as mentioned earlier in the presentation, but just to get out of isolation. People want to connect, want to have contact with other people, and social media as a good alternative for really meeting people in a way. So for a lot of people, it's their way to still have contact with a lot of other people. And really sort of reconnect with friends and society in a way. Of course, they talk a lot about Corona and health-related topic, but it's more generic. You see the same in the Netherlands, by the way. So we asked this more directly. We did some social media monitoring there as well. And 41% of the people say, okay, I increased my use of social media in the last few weeks. So there's really this clear connection on let's say, an alternative for the real context. So that's maybe a good side of social media at the moment. If you look at Spain, we did some other things there. We have quite a big community where we, in a more qualitative way, can have conversations with people and ask them quick questions, ask them to respond to each other and so on. We have a similar community in the Netherlands. And in Spain, we ask, okay, can you sort of plot in where you do yourself, where you can find yourself in adapting to the new situation? I won't go through this whole slide, but it starts with disbelief, it's confusion, I don't want this, maybe I just say it's not real, and so on. And you can get up to the letter where in the end we call it fear, where we get back to normal, but people are still afraid that the situation will return and so on. What we saw in Spain was quite interesting, that people feel they are sort of in an adjustment phase. So they have sort of accepted the situation, but they don't really feel comfortable with it. They have not acclimatized, difficult English words, but they are adjusting to their new situation. When asking similar questions in our Dutch community, where we did this as well, the Dutch situation is a bit similar, although we were lower on the curve. So the phase of really preparing, that's a phase before adjustment. The preparing phase is where we all know the situation, where people bought extra toilet paper and so on. We are also past that. And people try to live more consciously at the moment. They are adapting to the situation. So they try to do some sports at home. A lot of videos about that and how you can do that. They take some extra vitamins, like 80% of the people bought extra vitamins. They do the social distancing, although we also asked this in the community, do you feel this is a good measure? And a lot of people tend to think, well, it's not really working because people get too close anyway. You can also get the disease by touching maybe a shopping cart or so on. So people are not sure that's the right way. So these are examples of things we can ask in such a community. Italy, the third one, there's one other thing I would like to pick out, and it's trust in who they trust, let's say, to solve this problem. There we saw some really interesting things. They still have trust in, let's say, regional governments, especially hospitals. So that's relatively good. But the more interesting part I wanted to show you is this one. So we all know that there's quite a good relation between Italy and China, and that this gives some tensions in the EU as well. Sometimes Italy looks more to China than to Europe, and China also helped Italy in their problem when they sort of finished a bit of their own problems, sending them masks and so on. And you see this reflected here. So they have much more trust in the Chinese government of solving the problems and taking the right measures compared to the US or the EU government. And that's also interesting if you want to take an outlook to the future. What does this mean for future relations between the EU, especially if you know that our Dutch Prime Minister said no to help to Italy, for example, and a lot of fighting there. So this also will severely impact future of the cooperation between EU. So that's also things you see already happening just before your eyes in a way. Last but not least is of course here the Netherlands. And for this part, I want to switch the mic to Maaike, who will explain a bit on what this means for the Dutch situation and the public opinion here.
Yes, thank you, Eric, and good afternoon. So we've seen a fast changing climate of opinion all over the world. And you may wonder, what is the impact on the Dutch public opinion? Well, first of all, we see people rally around their leader. So dissonant noises have become very unpopular and therefore not much heard. So the Dutch want to stick together and battle this crisis together. In fact, this attitude is not very uncommon. Just look at some examples from American history, where we've seen the approval rates for certain political leaders skyrocketing in times of crisis. Think of President Kennedy after the Cuban Missile Crisis, but also George Bush after Operation Desert Storm, and George Bush Jr. after the September 11 attacks. So the effects are usually short-term though, but they do happen. So we see the same happening here in the Netherlands. Trust in our government is increasing enormously. Also, the satisfaction with the government is skyrocketing. Not to mention the increase in satisfaction with our Prime Minister. And what is also very striking is that even the political party he is leading is rapidly gaining support. If you could see that in the next slide, yes. As the polls indicate, a rise in parliamentary seats of over 8 in the last month for the VVD. And when you look at the opposition, like the PVV and Forum for Democratie, who are spreading a more dissonant sound, they are losing support. So having said that, let's look at the other ways, apart from rallying around our leaders, in which we in the Netherlands experience the impact on the public opinion. We see this crisis is changing our political agenda. We've been asking the Dutch population what they think are the top 5 priorities our government should focus on. And perhaps logically, but healthcare and jobs were showing the highest scores. Now, the real victims of this crisis seem to be education and climate change. As you can see, they are likely to be put in the fridge for the time being.
Okay, thank you, Maaike. I will pick up for the last part then. What we did try to do, and you could see the political part Maaike just explained as an example of that, the changing agenda and how this will impact maybe the future. I think a lot of people who are environmentally connected in a way or involved are really worried about how this change in agenda will define the future actually, and this is happening on more topics. So we try to pick on some early signs for you, sort of to keep in mind for what might happen, although it's not 100% sure, of course, no one knows this perfectly. And what we try to do is put it in this framing. So you can see the development and trends in a few levels to make it sort of easy in a way. You have macro forces which are on a global level, real long-term things happening. It's like, how do people think about death sentence or really macro trends? And really on the other side is the signal. So that's what you currently see happening. So this could be the buying of extra toilet paper. What's the change in their behavior? But they influence each other, of course. Especially when such a disruptor to this, let's say, ecosystem like COVID-19 is happening, this whole behavior is changing and it will influence the trends and the macro forces as well. We don't know this in detail, but we are looking into that. So these are the longer term. This is the longer term impact. And our next webinar, it's on Thursday, next Thursday, will be deep diving into this. So how will these short-term developments connect to these macro forces in the longer term? So it's good if you're interested. There will be an invite later on if you're sure you want to follow that. And you can put it in the comment box already, including your email. We will make sure you're invited there as well. It will be an interesting webinar, I think. So some things we picked up mostly also from other countries further up the curve. So for example, China. This is from a Chinese study, and we asked, okay, how does your day look like? And in a broader sense, it's the switch to online. So this switch to online is already going on for quite a while, of course, but this really strengthens this. It's what you see here. How do people fill their time? By watching TV, watching movies online, but also e-commerce. I will get back to that later on. Shopping online, it's exploding. So things happening already are really enhancing in speed in a way. But you could also say probably the same from working at home or even schooling from home in a digital way. So the whole transformation process is going on, and no one knows what will continue later on, but that online will grow hugely in many ways after this. That's pretty sure. But also the health thing. So the remark on the right side, right side, or middle right side. I don't do anything anymore. I just watch TV and TV. I don't sport anymore. So maybe we have a next wave of obesitas in the next few months. So a lot of things happening there. There's also another movement, by the way. We'll get back to that in a minute. Connected to e-commerce, as mentioned, in a lot of countries, especially Asian countries, a huge growth of e-commerce. And so when you ask people, do you buy stuff you would normally buy in a shop? Over 50% say they do it more online. So that's a real big transformation. We also asked this in the Netherlands, where we are already online savvy. We already have one of the highest percentages of people buying online compared to the rest of the world, actually. But even there, 30% of the people say they buy more online of stuff they would normally buy offline. And especially, it really can be a breakthrough innovation, buying food more online. That debate is going on for years. Will food also transform to e-commerce? Up until now, it's a bit, but not so much, few percent. But now people don't dare to go out and buy groceries anymore, so they buy it online. And that will not change fully back after the corona crisis. So one other example. Another Chinese example of how this might, let's say, define the future. It's in the automotive, in the car industry, where first the sales of new cars in China collapsed. It was like 90% down. People did not buy cars anymore. But now things are changing. So when you now ask people, okay, how do you want to transport or commute in the future? And you connect it before and after Corona, they all want to have private cars, but because it's more safe and you cannot get these contagious diseases, and they don't want to go by bus anymore. So the sales of new cars will probably go up hugely. That's at least expected as an influence there. And also the cars being sold were mostly sold online. So the whole distribution channel of selling cars is also changing heavily. And the second thing here related to cars is how the cars will look like and what components they will have or attributes. So now people ask in a much more extensive way is, I want healthy configuration of my cars. Who would have thought you would ask, and normally you want to have cool wheels or a sun shield or whatever. And now they're asking for a healthy configuration of cars. They want around 50% wants anti-germ air conditioner or interiors made of antibacterial materials, the insides of the car. No one would have thought that would be relevant 2 months ago or maybe even 1 month ago. And I'm not saying it will remain like 50%, but even if that will get down to 10%, it really influences how cars will be built in the future. So it's not only the sales of cars in itself, but also how that will look like. One other thing about this is healthcare. I mentioned this already. So if you ask the people, how do you want to maintain this healthier lifestyle, because that's what Chinese people say is one of the biggest changes in their life. They want to have a more healthier lifestyle. They say they want to eat more healthy, they want to have more dairy products, more physically, more exercises, and one of the things mentioned here as well, and they want to do more bathing and showering. It's also quite an interesting one. So also one of the things where it really influences behavior and potentially future behavior. And of course, this is, by the way, a good opportunity to see a Chinese word cloud. I never seen one, but it looks quite impressive. So also good to have a few there, probably. So connect to brands then. So this is a sort of a peek through on how you could behave as a brand. Because there's a big impact, and you see it here already in this picture. This woman is doing her shopping in a different, not really fashionable style, and probably a different shop, and her shoppings probably look different than normally, and that's actually what is happening. So normally, if people do shopping, they buy stuff and so on. It's really sort of an automatic process. You don't think about every time you do your shopping. You just grab your stuff you normally buy every week. So there are different steps in that process, and I won't deep dive into all of them, but to give you some framing here, you have the physical context. So the shop needs to be there. You should be able to go there. Your car should work, and so on. You have the social context. It's like, okay, what can I tell my friends? What's in my culture? What is sort of normal to buy? There's the processing thing. Which information do I get? Does a website work? And so on. There's this identity. What does it tell about me? But also emotion. Do I feel happy at the moment? It influences the way people shop. And it's of course the ability. So what can I do? What am I able to do? What do I understand? Things like this. And this process is currently totally collapsed in a way, you could say. So people cannot do this anymore because they cannot go to a shop, or it's even forbidden to go to a restaurant, for example. So the decision-making process is totally redefining in a way, in an unprecedented way, actually. So you should react to that. Being a brand, you should react to that, right? There's no alternative. But brands are really nervous on how, because they don't want to be seen as the one profiting from the current crisis. On the other hand, they want to stay visible. So, and you see so many different reactions by brands of this. It's really complex. There's a real doubt about the best way. We think actually there's a big opportunity for brands to position themselves very well in this moment, and to use this in a sustainable and mature way of reacting and showing they also help develop society in a way. So there's really a big opportunity there, and you see so many initiatives there. So we took a few out of them. Don't have to go in detail, and some of you will have seen, but you have ABN AMRO donating laptops to schools. You have Bavaria not only producing beer, but also sanitizers, for example, or Jumbo making sure that staff from hospitals and so on can still do their shoppings and avoid they are hampered by empty shelves at the end of their working day. So they bring sort of foodie bags to them, or they can buy it. I think a lot of people have seen this one, where bol.com sort of freely offers books for children because they have to stay at home now all the time, and they might get bored, and their parents might get a bit in panic as well. It can also be about money. So Unilever giving 100 million even to help COVID problems, countries in problems at the moment. Or this is really small, not sure if you can see it, a French insurance company, Mive, a really nice initiative where they say, okay, but we save money because there's not so many cars on the road anymore, not so many accidents. And we say to our clients, you can either get a refund on your premium, or we can pool that refund and give it to countries who have problems with COVID or organizations. So really good opportunities to show your relevant position in a way in society. There's also the other way around. People watching Zondag with Lubach every Sunday know about this. So you can also sort of destroy your brand. There's a lot of negative story building around this brand Rumach, connected to a Rode Kruis action, a charity fund, where people don't believe, they don't profit from it, and a lot of negative publicity. So this is in a way a moment of truth for you as a brand to show the right reaction. And it also connects to this part. You need to be present. So it is tempting for some brands to sort of phase out all marketing actions and just save costs everywhere. But you should be visible at the moment, but you should do it in the right way. And it also offers an opportunity in quite a clear way. Also in a commercial way, and I think this is a nice example, and here you have many as well, where Netflix brought online a new proposition, Netflix Party, where you can synchronize what you watch on television through your Netflix channel. Together with friends, you watch it at the same time. So as someone of you pauses it, it pauses for everyone. There's a chat box next to it. So you still have that experience of watching a television show together with your friends or family or whatever. So really a nice example, but of course they do it to grow their business as well. And that's what you very often see. So for example, Airbnb, they started in 2008 in the former crisis, and it helped them to enable their growth in a very, very fast way. Because a lot of people did not have money, or not so much money anymore, but they still wanted to travel, so they used Airbnb to do cheap traveling, and it really brought them where they are now. So these are also moments of truth, but also giving you opportunities. Last but not least, and I will end up there, it's not only about business. We are also people. We are living in a society. We see the effects of what's happening, and we don't know what will be the future and how this all will impact the future. So I want to end with 3 potential influences for the next few years or decades. I don't know. Sort of to round this up and to get you a bit of thinking with you into the weekend in a way. Also connected to the part Mark told in let's say the political area. So one of the things is, will there be a return of what you could call big government? So the government is really in control now. People accept it. They accept fines. They know they bail out a lot of companies and persons and the whole healthcare system, but also they redistribute wealth. So there will be a lot of measures being taken because some people are more hit by the coronavirus and crisis than other people. Will that return back to normal after this period, or will there be more respect and will be government more sort of in control? That's one of the questions. The second one is globalization. There has been debate already over the last few years regarding globalization. A lot of people didn't like it, other people do like it. How does this influence this crisis? So there's the solution in globalization, the finding of new cures and medical care. But on the other way, like people like Trump call it a Chinese virus. What does this mean for the mindset of people? Do they want to close and continue to close their borders, for example? How will this look like? And the last one is privacy. So we accept, we sort of give back a bit of our privacy also to government to find a solution. For example, in Asia, people who have corona or are registered to have corona, their cell phones are being read to see with other people they were in contact with. Will things like that be normal? Will that be accepted also after corona crisis? How will this influence in how we look upon privacy? Don't know for sure yet. So these 3 things, I don't know the answer yet, but I think these will be influenced in the future. So again, I think good to round up and to take some thoughts with you for your virtual bar meetings with friends or family, and maybe to round it up there for the story for today. And we are now at 45 minutes exact. So let's see if we can take on a few questions, and other questions we are not able to take the time now. We will send you answers later on. There's one question about the growth of sharing economy. That's of course difficult to say, but a few things you can say here, I guess. Maybe as mentioned, the example of Airbnb growing really fast in a time of crisis, and if you combine this with the current reshaping of the online landscape, my expectation would be that it will grow very fast after this period. It was already growing very fast, of course, as we all know, but that will be much faster. And maybe one thing worth mentioning here is that what we will be doing in the next few weeks as well is do a more detailed tracking of what's happening in the e-commerce world. Will also be shared with you probably on Tuesday, where we will try to follow developments like this, both in e-commerce but also platforms. So that's definitely, and no one knows for certain, of course, but combining crisis with growth of online and a bit of the growth of social media and so on, it makes sense that will be positively impacted by that. Okay. Again, running out of time. Thank you very much for attending. I hope it's enough food for thought for you to get into the weekend. I hope you have a great weekend. I tend to have the feeling that weekends do look a bit the same like a weekdays at the moment, but we have to cope with it, and we all have. So good luck, good health, and I hope to speak to you soon.